My name is Kelly Barner, and thank you for joining me for this week's Supplier Diversity Discussions video. So today I actually have something really neat to share with you. I was recently featured by LinkedIn as the idea of the day on January 20th. And that idea of the day was the types of actions that we can take to build more inclusive supply chains. Now, I was thrilled about that. It was obviously a huge honor to get that spotlight and to use the opportunity to draw attention to the type of work that procurement and supply chain professionals are doing to advance diversity and inclusion in the corporate space. But the honors didn't stop there. I had posted the article a few days earlier, and on January 17th, during the Buzz, which is every Monday, the live stream on Supply Chain Now, my good friends Scott Luton, Greg White, and Kevin L. Jackson actually talked about my piece. And so what I want to share with you in this week's video is Kevin L. Jackson's response to what I shared in the article. So I'm going to pause and let you hear and see him in his own way express his thoughts on the piece. And then I'll come back and I'll add a little bit of context based on what he shared.
Well, I'm going to elevate it. Greg said he didn't want to elevate it. Well, I'm going to elevate it. Look, okay. One, I know we skipped the last article, but that last article was all about human nature, in that humans don't like change, right? But change is what drives growth. You have to be forced to change. And COVID-19 has changed the entire world. These discontinuities drove really a jolt to every industry. And this drives uncertainty. So everybody's not sure of what's going to happen. So they're thinking about, how do I respond to this change? I've been forced to change that I don't want to, but now I have to. So that's another jolt. And the third jolt is, how do I change my long-term strategy to reflect what I've learned so that I can survive in the next normal? Now, these uncertainties drive a growth mindset. And this is really a force for good, because growth sets a trajectory for the future where millions more people can prosper and attain greater economic security, more material comfort, and better, higher well-being than before, because this has been forced on us. So growth is an enabler for our progress towards inclusion and sustainability. This helps create well-paid jobs, right? Uber drivers make more money than truck drivers. Truck drivers was a good middle-class job, right? And this generates sufficient funding for things like climate transition. So, jolts are good, change is good, and we've been forced to make that change. And this will be towards inclusion and sustainability. So diversity, those that are successful in our global supply chains are those organizations that embrace diversity and inclusion.
So I appreciate Kevin's perspective on this. He's the host of a show called Digital Transformers. And so he constantly functions in a world that's all about change. And one of the earliest points he made in that clip is that people don't like change. I completely agree with that. I personally, not a big fan of change. I think a lot of other people probably feel the same way. But not only do we not like even small nuanced changes, we certainly don't like big sudden changes. And that's where we get to the series of 3 jolts that Kevin talked about. So the first jolt he talked about was COVID. We've all lived through that. The second piece he talked about was the discontinuity caused by the jolt of COVID. And then finally, the third jolt is something that we get the opportunity to deliberately cause ourselves. And that is how we are going to change our long-term outlook and strategy to succeed in this next normal, however we want to put that. I think the most interesting thing that I take away from Kevin said is that although jolt doesn't sound great and jolts don't always feel great, these jolts can actually be a force for good. And that's where we bring this idea back to more inclusive, more diverse supply chains. It's in how we build out that long-term outlook and the strategy that accompanies it that gives us a chance to orient things differently. What is the decision-making process that we want to have behind the suppliers that we choose to work with? What do we expect of members of our supply chain around how they treat their suppliers and choose which suppliers to work with? So I think this is a really interesting way to look at it, that to a certain extent, I think many of us naturally, and again, I'll put myself on the line, many of us would love to just get back to normal. Well, normal's gone, right? All we have now is we've really lived through the first two jolts. But the third jolt, that's our choice. How are we going to work going forward? What will our priorities and objectives be? What strategies will we put into practice? That's what's going to create change, which gives us an opportunity to flip the tables on the universe so that we don't just have to be the victims of change all the time. So I appreciate the guys for bringing this up on The Buzz. Definitely check them out if you've never seen it. I appreciate Kevin's point of view on this. I love hearing other people's voices on this topic. And I appreciate the time it took for you to listen to or watch this video. So please add some comments, add your own thoughts. How do you feel about change? Do you agree about the three jolts? And then share your feedback and how you are planning to change the way you work going forward. Thanks so much for joining me.